All right, everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Aaron Owens Mayhew, the Backcountry Foodie. You're an Instagram sensation. You're helping people stay healthy while backpacking, which to me is super important as well. So, Aaron, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing good. It's going into the weekend and I have 2 hikes planned, so it can't get any better.
Well, where are you going?
I'm actually section hiking the Condor Trail here on the central coast of California. Weekend warrior style, because it's a 400-mile trail through the Los Padres National Forest, and I can't take off enough time to do it start to finish. And I've since learned that I never would want to do it start to finish because it's pretty horrible, to be honest. It's a remote trail. So doing it in small sections at a time has been plenty. So this weekend I'm just doing 2 longer day hikes as sections.
Well, that's something I learned on the Appalachian Trail is necessarily doing it in one full shot sounds cool and it's like a big goal for a lot of people, but you miss so much of the day-to-day beauty of the trail that like I highly recommend for everyone to just do things in sections, because you're going to get a lot more for your time in the shorter periods you're out there. So speaking of Condor Trail, that's something brand new to me. I've never heard of the Condor Trail until we started talking. So what's that trail like? I know you kind of mentioned briefly it's a little bit rough and tumble. So how is that compared to, say, like the PCT or other trails you have experience with?
They don't even compare. We recently moved to the central coast of California in September of last year, 2021. And it just so happened that we were looking for something to do one weekend, and we were on our way to National Park, the Pinnacles National Park. And I was looking on Gaia, looking at the trails, and I was like, wait a minute, what's this really long purple line? I'm like, oh, I better check that out, being a long distance hiker. And lo and behold, it's the Condor Trail. It's a through hike at the Los Padres National Forest, which is here on the central coast of California. And as to date, I think 4 people have completed it as a through hike. And it changes every single year, which is why it's pretty brutal, because there's not a lot of trail maintenance. It's pretty remote. So the first section we did, we were supposed to be a 4-day trip, and it took us 3 days to go halfway and had to bail out, just because of the overgrowth, poison ivy, climbing up and over. And actually that one, we spent 3/4 of the time in a creek because it was easier to walk down the creek than it was through the trail because it's non-existent. Then there's actually a lot of road walking because there's a lot of private land that you have to go walk around. So kind of like the Oregon Coast Trail is what I would compare it to in that, as there's a lot of road walking. Then there's really beautiful ridge walking where you get to look at the ocean for all day long. And then you're back into the woods where nobody's been there for months or even years sometimes. So it's actually the first trail I've done that I've been anxious. And I've done parts of the PCT, the AT, Colorado Trail. I've done all these that are really well-established trails. So it's like, yeah, no big deal. People have done these, but this one, every trip I kind of go on with it, like, I don't know what's going to happen. So it's like, okay, hope I'm all right.
That's part of the adventure. Getting into the scary stuff. That's what makes it fun. It's not fun while you're doing it because it's like really like, I don't want to mess this up and get lost. But like after the fact, like that was way more fun. I feel like you learn more on those more intense trails where you have to like second guess yourself and really pay attention to where you're going. Like I feel like you're learning and getting a ton more outdoor skills like just naturally when you go that route instead of just following a white blaze down the trail, like it's hard to get lost. So yeah, that sounds really cool. And the Oregon Coast Trail, that's not something I'm really familiar with either. How does that, separate itself from like the well-known trails?
That's another one I wouldn't recommend doing because it is so much road walking, and it's a fairly established trail. The route's pretty well marked, but it does literally walks down the coast of Oregon, the entire coast. But there's only so much of the beach that you can walk before there's the rocks that are jutting out to the water. So you can't get around the rocks. So you have to go back inland, walk the road for a while, then you get back on the beach. What was really challenging about the Oregon coast, obviously, are the tides. So you're every morning having to judge, okay, how fast do I need to go to beat the tide? Believe it or not, there's not any water. You have an entire ocean, but you can't drink it. So figuring out how much water you're going to have to carry was pretty challenging, because sometimes even if there was an inlet that you would have to go inland really far just to get far enough into where it was fresh and not the salt water that kind of washes up. So dehydration was actually a problem for me. And he was like, I'm on the ocean, like there's all kinds of water. So it was an interesting trip. I would not do it again just because of the road walking. So that one I would definitely recommend section hiking the beaches itself because they are beautiful.
Do they allow you to camp on the beaches on that trail?
No, because that's the other tricky part. This is beautiful beach, but it's private land. because the homes, I would say 90% of it is private homes that go down to the beach. So they have their own private beach frontage. So there were a lot of times I had to stealth camp at the bottom of somebody's yard, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And just be like, I hope they don't see me. I'm like, I'm behind these rocks.
You never get any sleep when you stealth camp either, because it's like you're so nervous the whole night that you're going to get busted and kicked out of your, you might as well just keep walking half the time. But sometimes there's nothing to do.
Right. Well, that's what the way the Oregon coast is set up, is that it's pretty much campground to campground. And they have really good setup for hiker bikers. So, but the problem is they're 20 miles apart for the most part. So you got to be ready to really put in some miles. So it's not for somebody that doesn't have hiker legs already. Otherwise, you're stealth camping, getting to campground, stealth camping, getting to campground kind of thing. Yeah. So it also wasn't the PCT. So
the PCT is very well known, and it's probably not as hard to get lost on something like that. But let's take a step back here. I got a little ahead of myself. How, what sparked your interest in backpacking? I mean, you're really into backpacking. You basically built your whole career around backpacking. And so how did you find an interest in it? Because it's a very popular sport, especially where there's lots of mountains. But for like where I'm at in Ohio, I just kind of fell into it. And like, there's backpacking communities, but it's not like huge like I would think on the coasts, where there's tons of mountains, tons of beautiful trails that are well established. So where did your passion come from here?
A long, long time ago. Actually, I'm from Kentucky originally. So backpacking when I was a kid just wasn't a thing. And I came from a family, I grew up on a horse farm, and my family, we didn't camp. That just wasn't something that we did. I grew up a competitive swimmer. So it wasn't until I moved out to Seattle in 2001 for a postgraduate program after graduate school that I was like, whoa, like this place is gorgeous. Like, what are all these mountains? I've never done this before. So I started out day hiking, and ultimately started backpacking. So I fell in love with it then, but it was really only a 3 to 5 day kind of, backpacker kind of thing. I didn't even know what the PCT was for a long time. So it didn't fall into long distance hiking until 2016 when I hit my midlife crisis. I was turning 40. I was like, I'm pretty miserable. Something's going on. I had a good job. I had a house. I had a job. I was in a good relationship, but I was still miserable. So I was like, well, something's up. So I ended up quitting my really secure job, and my parents and family and friends were like, what are you doing? You're 40. This is not a time to quit your job. So I was like, well, but I'm miserable. So I've got to do something. And by that time, I researched the PCT. I was like, this would be like the perfect thing right now for me. Take 5 months off, have a lot of self-reflection time. I mean, 5 months is a long time to think. So I was like, surely I can figure out like what's going on and what I need to do next with my life. So this is where like the long distance backpacking started then. And in preparation for that, I'd already been a dietitian for 16 years. At the time I was a long distance runner, trail runner. So, and I was really struggling keeping my weight on at that time. And I was only running really long on the weekends. So I was like, I'm going to be hiking this kind of mileage for 5 months every day. Like this is going to be a problem for me to keep my weight on. So, and at the time, again, I'd only been hiking 3 to 5 days at a time. So mountain house is what I knew. Just, go to REI, pull it off the shelf, put it in your backpack. So it's like 5 months of that. That's not going to work. I can't afford it. Yeah. Then I was like, it's too big. Then there's too much salt. It doesn't necessarily taste good. So I was like, okay, now what do I do? I didn't know what DIY backpacking food was. So I started looking into cookbooks. Bought a bunch of those, started kind of tinkering with those. And I'm a dietitian. I'm a super number nerd. So, and again, being a long distance runner, I knew I needed protein, I needed carbs, I needed all these things, and realized the recipes available weren't going to cut it either. So I was like, okay, now what do I do? So I got in the kitchen. I was like, okay, well, I know rice isn't going to do what I want to do, but I really like quinoa. So let me substitute this out. I know I need a lot of protein. So let me add this in. So that's where Foodie started, just by preparing for my PCT trip. And 5 years later, now it's an online platform, full-time job. It actually was my husband's job too, until just recently. It was both of ours. So now it's online recipes. I have a meal planner. I teach classes. I coach. And I love it. It's like backpacking for a living is like my dream job.
And it's, I'm always, I'm always impressed with people who can make a living out of the outdoors, like, because it's such a big arena. Like there's so many people where, like, I don't want to say there's so many people fighting for the same space on like in social media and stuff, but there's like a lot of people out there that would love to do, backpack full time and stuff. But it's really awesome. Like to me, when people take that leap at any age, whether it's 18 or 40 or 60, to go do something really impressive, whether it's a long distance hike, whatever. And I think for me, what I learned in long distance hiking is like patience really pays off, and you learn all these lessons that you don't get in college. Like with, especially, you know, you've done like post grad and stuff, it sounds like, so you've got some extensive college years in, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot of practical things going to school, but you don't learn a lot of practical things about how kind of the natural world operates until you can, it's like, until you're just out there and you can sit in it and be in it and just watch it. Like when you're on the PCT in the middle of nowhere, there's nothing to do. There's no video games to play.
There's a lot of quiet time.
And you get to watch animals, and it all just starts to make sense. And I think that's how people like you and me and a lot of other people have had on the podcast and that you work with, we get addicted to the outdoors because we crave that, like, I don't know what you want to call it, like getting in tune with nature, and you realize a lot of stuff isn't important that you used to think was important. So what I like to ask this question a lot because I have tons of answers myself, but what lessons have you learned kind of taking, I would assume, a simpler lifestyle, creating your whole lifestyle and business around the outdoors? What kind of things have you learned that maybe are a little more important to you than the rat race that I'm sure you used to live, I used to live? Like that life's not great. I didn't like that life at all.
No.
So. Yeah.
The 2-hour commute each way was miserable.
No.
And actually another thing that we did, I was saying my husband quit his job and was working for Backcountry Foodie, is we lived in a Sprinter van for 2.5 years. So even then, like, we learned a lot of life lessons, kinds of things there. And I love the simplicity. And actually, I did a podcast interview yesterday all about minimalism because I'm in a house now and I'm claustrophobic because I love the outdoors that much. It's just mentally, I feel so much better being out in the open. Like, I love being able to, the van I loved so much is that if I need to take a brain break is what I call it. I just overwhelmed, need to take a break. I just go for a hike right out the door. I mean, it was amazing. Then I'd come back refreshed, and then I could go back to work. Whereas in my old job, it was go all the time, meet deadlines, answer calls, answer emails and all that. And just having my job the way I have it now is I can go away for a weekend, and recharge and that kind of thing. And it's tough because I do have a backpacking business, to not be checking in with Instagram and Facebook and those things on my trips because folks really enjoy seeing what I do. But that is my personal time, to be honest. And that's my time that I do get to recharge. So then when I do come back, I'm fresh. And then I jump back into the business again. So being outside is huge for me. I mean, it's how I function, to be honest.
And, I think it's something that seems very like weird to complain about. But when you have like a social media presence and like the lights on you a lot of the time, and especially with the outdoors industry, it's like it turned into a hobby, and now it's more starting to turn into a like work. So to like finding that balance to like where it's okay to just not take pictures and make content, because we all we talk about, all those people online, I need content. Content. And that's something I've personally kind of fallen into as well, is trying to ride that line. Like, I will do trips where I go and I'll bring a camera, but I'm not like, that's not the focus of the trip. And then I have trips where I plan, like, I am going on this trip specifically to make things. Right. Like, I would say people see only like 50% of the things I do outdoors online because I still want to enjoy that time and don't want it to feel like a chore. Right. Every time I go out, I got to carry a backpack full of camera gear and microphones. Like, sometimes I do actually want to be outside. So, I'm sure that's like something you have to learn over time too, is like balancing in work and life. So how do you kind of handle that balance? Because it's something like people probably been noticing I've been posting on Instagram a lot less than I used to. And it's like, for me, it's like I'm starting to lose the value in just posting just to post. It's like I'd rather make better things that I'm proud of. You know what I'm saying?
Very extremely true. So I think the way I'm doing it now is I go in, like you're saying, this Condor Trail trip is actually a planned trip for learning purposes, for me to actually learn new things. Because what I'm doing is an interesting experiment. I am my own guinea pig. I'm doing an experiment on only eating foods from the Dollar Tree for this trip. So it's kind of for helping through hikers that are having to resupply in really remote places that have maybe a dollar store, Dollar General, gas stations and that kind of thing. So this is me working on new recipes for just that population specifically. So going out for 2 days at a time, it's not so bad, doing Dollar Tree things. And it's actually, I've been surprised by how well I can actually eat for that amount of time. So this trip specifically is for that versus like, I want to go back and do the Colorado Trail that I wasn't able to finish last year. And that's going to be my checkout time. I'm going to take pictures, but I'm not going to report during the trip because it's going to be during the summer. I'm giving myself 2 weeks to chill. Then I'll just post the pictures when I get back kind of thing. Or I typically will go hiking on a weekend. And then on Monday, I'll be like, hey, I learned blah, blah, blah. And kind of here's how some of the things that I learned over the weekend that maybe will help you on your next trip. So I do the similar kind of thing.
Well, the Colorado Trail is interesting to me. I've noticed kind of this trend. A lot of thru hikers that I've talked to, whether they be PCT thru hikers or AT thru hikers, not so much CDT thru hikers, but a lot of the people that I know personally, the Colorado Trail seems to be like their post first long thru hike. They'll do the Colorado Trail secondary. I don't know why that is. Is it like not as long? Is it not as I don't know, or more challenging? I don't really know much about the Colorado Trail.
It's a completely different beast in itself. Well, it's definitely not as long. So it's one of those, if you've already taken your PCT, AT to hike, duration off, maybe you can't take that kind of time off again. So you can usually knock it out in about a month. But it's different kind of challenge. For me, it was storm anxiety. That was a completely new feeling that I'd never experienced before. It wasn't the trail itself. The trail itself was actually not too bad. It's well marked. It's easy to follow, that kind of thing. But timing, I mean, when the storms come in Colorado, they come in quick and they come in really bad. So that was a new thing that I knew. Every day I had to get up and over a ridge at a certain time. I had to get back down into camp by a certain time. So it was just kind of push for that kind of thing. Unfortunately, a reason why I didn't finish it, I have a bad habit of not finishing trails for a variety of reasons, is I got a cold. I was like, I've got a respiratory cold, and I was miserable for 200 miles. I didn't eat either. So that was a whole experience in itself, is I drank all my nutrition. So that I was able to come back and teach people about, is how to not lose weight and still drink all your nutrition. But yeah, so it's just a completely different beast from the other ones.
And then, the nutrition side of things, I have lots of questions about nutrition. It's something that, as a someone who thru hiked, you need protein and your body is like craving things, but you don't necessarily know what they are. I didn't find like really what I felt like was a comfortable mix of different foods until I was almost done thru hiking the Appalachian Trail, because like, if you're going to have a ton of climbs, you're going to want it, from my uneducated, undiet educated perspective. Like if you say, I'm going to be climbing a ton of mountains today, I'm going to need a ton of carbohydrates just for burning fuel, basically, a ton of fat just so my body doesn't like shrivel away and die, like just to keep body weight on, and then protein to like repair your muscles essentially for all the beating up you're doing. That's my level of knowledge about diet. So how did you know that you wanted to be a dietitian? Because that's like a very specific thing to want to be, I feel like. So where did that come from firstly?
Oh gosh, that was by accident too, actually. I grew up, I didn't know what a dietitian was. I mean, that just wasn't something that was a popular career at the time. Again, like I was saying, I was a competitive swimmer. I was very athletic growing up. But as the same today, I was always injured. So I'm very stubborn. I like to push hard. And then I end up not listening to my body. I was always injured. So I was actually going to be a sports physical therapist because I was always in the PT office. And then in order to go to PT school, you had to have a degree of some sort to be able to apply. And the closest thing that was for PT was nutrition. And that just turned out the more and more nutrition classes I took, the more and more I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Like, I think I kind of like this. And then in nutrition, in order to be a dietitian, you have to do an internship. And then once you become a dietitian, to get a better job, then you have to get a master's degree. And then to get another job, then you have to do a postgraduate thing. So it was just one of those, just bam, bam, bam after another. And then what's interesting is the only thing I ever did was pediatrics. My entire 16-year career was pediatrics, and specifically children with special healthcare needs. So I was niched down to this very small population, and always still being an athlete on the side and then being a backpacker. So when I did make the career shift to Backcountry Foodie, it was a complete change from what I'd been used to. So.
Well, that's awesome. And like, where did you think to yourself, this could be a viable business where I could like make my living off of this, like doing diet for backpacking, like specifically, like where did this thought process start to come together? Because those aren't like two things you'd ever think that would just like go together, but you've made it work, which is awesome. I think that's so cool.
I think I'm one of the only, especially, recipe dietitians and meal planning kind of dietitians for backpackers. I think I'm one of the only, if not the only, doing it. It started really early on the PCT, is that I would actually have people following behind me and sending me text messages on Instagram saying, what did you leave in the hiker box? So, because I want to eat your leftover food.
Nice.
And actually at the time, because I was still learning about all this, I had packed way too much food. So I was leaving quite a bit behind. So it started just from that. And then as time went on, because I didn't finish the PCT, I got injured with some silly shoulder injury. I ended up I made 5 months worth of food. It's 450 pounds of homemade food. So I ended up shipping it out to other thru hikers for free, just because I didn't want it to go for waste. And then just their feedback was like, you really need to do something with this. So it started just from that experience. And then I wrote my first cookbook. And that did pretty well, but a cookbook's not going to pay the bills. So then that's kind of where things kind of transitioned to where we are today.
Yeah, I love that every single person I talk to who creates an outdoors business, they're always like, yeah, it was pretty much a complete accident. And then here I am. Like, I don't know. It's always like, what happened? Like, I woke up and here I am, and this is what I do for a living now. It always seems like that. It's like, there's no magical formula. Like people, you just do stuff and it is what it is.
And I jumped into this with zero business experience too. So that's when I tell people that are kind of in the situation I was, is like, you just got to jump in. Like you learn along the way. There are things now that I wish I had known from the beginning, but I mean, it just, had I not taken that leap, I would still be where I was, to be honest, and I'd be miserable. So I'm glad that I just stepped into it and just did it.
Well, that's what I always tell people too, when they have a lot of anxiety about doing anything, like, especially outdoors, really, like since after you do long distance anything, you're always like that local guy that did the AT or did the P. You're always that like, oh, I know that guy. Right. He's that guy that did the thing. So like randomly, I will still get people to this day, even though I haven't done any long distance backpacking in like 5 or 6 years. I still get people like, what do I need to do to thru hike? And then you basically have to. It's the speech has become much shorter. Like you just have to go. You just have to do it. Like the worst thing is you're going to fail and you'll just be back where you were, or you'll be on a new trajectory. Right. So like I always tell people, just jump off the cliff. There's water down there. You'll be fine. Yep. Either way, you like something's going to happen. And it's usually, like in your case, positive. It took your whole life into a whole new trajectory, and you're so much happier, I would assume. Oh,
so much happier. You can't even compare. Yeah.
But let's kind of dive down the dietitian talk, because I've, in the last probably 3 to 5 years, like nutrition has become very important to me. I've started to take my health seriously, like trying to stay physically in shape, doing the big C word cardio that everybody hates so much. But once you're in your 30s, you just got to do it, or you're just gonna have a bad. Like it's necessary.
Just wait till you're in your 40s.
Yeah,
it's even harder.
It gets worse and worse. So, I have like I said earlier, I have a fairly basic level understanding of diet, nutrition needs, and how to like lose weight and gain weight, and just like day-to-day life. But when you're talking long distance backpacking specifically, not short mini trips, not, day hikes or whatever, you need a very, very high caloric amount of food. But to me, that translates to junk, because that's what I ate on the Appalachian Trail. Like it's enough to give you energy and like make you feel like you're alive. But like there's not a ton of great nutritional value in like a box of Oreos. I wouldn't think so. And that's what we're eating. We're like dipping Oreos in peanut butter, just trying to keep weight on our bodies. So I think I really enjoy what you do, because as someone now, if I were to do another thru hike, I would absolutely take your advice and try and eat as healthy as possible, because you're not doing harm to your body as much, and you're getting important things. Like, I don't know if you go all the way down to like micronutrients, macronutrients, all these kind of things. So what should, like at a base level, how would you explain to of someone wanting to thru hike something, how to build their food in a way that's going to keep them healthy and satiated to the best of their ability with what they're able to carry. Like, what are the basics, the ground level?
Well, this is my specialty. Like, being a dietitian is, and two, people think about all those calories, has to weigh a lot. So they think about only looking at calories per ounce, which is really unfortunate, because a lot of the high calories per ounce foods that a lot of influencers talk about are the Pop-Tarts, the honey buns, those kind of things that aren't nutritionally dense, unfortunately. So what I also encourage people to do, and I think you kind of mentioned this, is take your regular diet that you're used to at home and then just convert that into a dehydrated form, because your body's used to burning those same kind of carbs. It's used to that kind of protein. So you're going to keep functioning. If you're already training it at home, you're used to functioning at that level, versus now all of a sudden if you eat relatively healthy, which is kind of what you're saying, and then you load up on all these sugars, you're going to get these sugar highs, and then you're going to crash, and then you get sugar highs and crash. You're not going to recover because you're not eating the protein that you would normally eat at home. And then through hiking, you're stressing your body a lot. So it's even more important to eat well when you're backpacking for these kind of conditions than even at home. So that's kind of my basic thing, is just kind of look at what your home diet is. If you're a pasta eater, eat pasta while you're out there. It's easy to pre-cook and dehydrate. And I actually make it in huge batches in the off season, so I don't have to think about it the rest of the year. If you don't have a dehydrator, people sell it already pre-cooked and dehydrated. Ramen's fine. Just give her the sodium packet. And so one of my favorite recipes is my garlic parmesan ramen. It's ramen noodles. I think it's basil and Parmesan cheese, salt and pepper, and olive oil. That's it. And I mean, it's super easy and it's delicious. So it's taking that next step from just eating the packet of ramen to adding more to it. Similar kind of thing is, instead of eating just that instant packet of oatmeal, add some nuts to it, add some dried fruit, add some coconut, put whole milk powder in it. So you go from 150 calorie packet to like a 600 calorie meal that's going to keep you full for hours and has the protein in it. Like I was talking about the meal replacement drinks, they're super easy to do too. The favorite one that I tell everybody about, especially through hikers, because you can buy it at Walmart, is whole milk powder, the PB2 powder, and a Carnation Instant Breakfast packet. I mean, it's 670 calories, 35 grams of protein, and 8 ounces of water. So, I mean, that's just those simple kind of things that I know as a dietitian that I'm trying to teach other people, because they don't necessarily come naturally to other people, like you're saying. It's one of those things that comes naturally to me that I'm just trying to help teach. But the biggest thing is taking your normal diet and then just boosting it up to when you're through hiking, because you do need, I mean, and people have different calorie needs. So depending on the trail, like the Oregon Coast Trail was flat. I mean, I'm at sea level, but then I was on the AT, I was eating 6,000 calories easy, because, you know, you're up and down, climbing up and down rocks. So even thinking about your trip too, specifically, is kind of catering to what your needs are going to be for that. But like I said, protein's super important at night for recovery purposes. So
I've noticed that a trend that I've seen, like in general, not even specific to the outdoors, is like in America, we don't really get a good teaching on food at all. No. Like, we learn the food pyramid, which still isn't that great of a thing to look off of. Like, there's so many fashion diets, and there's so many like so many buzzwords that I think a lot of people get confused about diet. It's like this scary word that basically they think means either fully restricting something, whether it be carbs or whatever. Whereas, like, I don't follow any sort of diet per se, but I like try and get like an appropriate balance of like those big three: carbs, fat, and like protein. That's like the basic tenets of like, and it should nutrition.
Be that easy. Honestly,
I feel like
it's that easy. I'm a true believer in there are no bad foods. It's all about how much you eat of those different foods. And the fad diets, I think as Americans, just because of our lifestyle, we want quick fixes. So a lot of the fad diets will give you kind of a quick fix, but then maintaining it is a totally different story. So you might lose a lot of weight, but then you're going to rebound and add it back on, because you just can't maintain whatever that fad diet is. Instead of just learning how to eat fruits and vegetables, have a piece of protein for dinner, have some pasta or something, just normal food and normal amounts. But the key is to also be physically active. I mean, that's a lot of our problems as Americans, is that we work too much. We're sitting in chairs, behind our computers for too long. We're not doing labor like people did way back when, where they actually were leaner. So yeah, to me, again, no bad foods, just eat a healthy variety of things and be active.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. Even as much as you probably hate this, even if like it can be for weight loss, almost, it can be as simple as calories in, calories out, but that's just like not really a long, like if you eat 1,000 calories in greasy burger, like it's obviously not as going to be good for you as like a balanced diet. But even on something like when there's limited food options available, like when you're through hiking, it can be, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just talking, like calories in, calories out as a last ditch effort can be a really like way to like fuel yourself, because that's all I knew going into the Appalachian Trail. I knew I was burning approximately 6,000, 7,000 calories a day. I need to eat at least that much. So we're literally doing math, like in the grocery store, like this has 280 calories per, like I wasn't looking at nutrition facts, but like, you know, the thing that gets me is the salt content. That kind of freaks me out with some of the food, like the backpacking food specifically. And you're always saying, you know, ditch the salt packet, ditch this. So what are like the negative side effects of having too much salt? Because I try and stay away from that kind of stuff now too, like Mountain House, not to like bash their brands or whatever. It's just like Salt City, and you can feel it in your hands when you're walking. They like balloon
water
up. And,
retention.
Like, it's terrible. So what's like the negative side of salt in all
that
food?
The salt retention, if you're sweating enough, some people are sweaty, they're salty sweaters. So some people do need that really high sodium content in their diet, just because if you're crusty and, have the white salt, then you actually do need that amount of sodium. But otherwise, you're going to experience water retention if you're not used to eating a lot of salt in your normal diet. Like I don't normally add salt to things naturally. I really only add salt. I actually don't even add salt to most of our recipes for that reason, is I do more like pretzels or something with salt on them, or nuts with salt on them, so I can get in what sodium that I need on the trail. But and I actually wonder like how much of it's as a preservative too, because these meals are safe for 25 years. So I've always kind of wondered like, why is it safe for so long?
Kind of freaks me out. Do you do any do you like grow your own food at all, or do you like for your own trips specifically? I mean, like, to have a garden that you can incorporate a lot of this like fresh natural food that's maybe dehydrated or something like that?
I have a raised bed. We're renting this house right now. There's actually a raised bed in the backyard that I would love to grow. Nice. But I just haven't had time yet because we've got so many things going on with the business that I haven't had time to take advantage of it. But I would love to eventually, because it would actually save me a lot of money growing my own, because being a recipe dietitian, that's what I go through, a lot of ingredients. So kind of what I do this is my big thing. I don't like to waste food. Is every Sunday I go through whatever we haven't eaten that's going to go bad within the next few days, actually dehydrate it or freeze dry it. So that's my way of kind of recycling food, I guess you could say, or upcycling, so that I don't have to buy a lot of those extra ingredients.
Well, it's so funny because for people like you and I who spend a lot of time outdoors, probably an inordinate amount of time to the average population, you start to become a lot more conscious of the environmental impact of things. And to me, it goes all the way down to my food. Again, like, it's the food I eat daily is like, I think, how can I get like the least amount of environmental impact? And I know that's an extreme thought process, because like, this is my thing, like the outdoors is my like whole entire passion. So for me, it's not weird, but to a lot of people that is weird. Right. But I found myself even like getting bummed out on food scraps to the point where I got a composter, I got like a tumbler, all this stuff, like collecting rainwater, just trying to be like a low impact. And I think it's really, I don't know if you go to that extreme, but I think like that's all stuff that really factors into like living this like outdoors lifestyle, where it's like, I'm thinking what my impact at home is on the bigger thing. Cause like conservation at the end of the day is what's important. That's why, like, that's
why we get to do what we do. Right.
Yeah. Without it, there would be no us enjoying the outdoors. So is that, since you did the van life thing, which I do want to talk about, that's really cool. I always thought that was super cool. Don't know if I could personally do it, but have you noticed that you think like that more at all, or even like try and do as little impact as possible?
Right. I think we would compost everything at home, but I wasn't nearly as focused on like the food waste and scraps prior to van life. So living in the van, I think made me focus on it even more because our refrigerator was the size of like a college refrigerator. So I had to be very careful. And we were essentially both unemployed. So I was very conscious on how much money we were spending because we were living off of our savings as we were building Backcountry Foodie. Yep. So that's, I think, had a lot to do with it. I was just very conscious of like, have I used all of this green onion? What can I do with it now since I'm not going to use it all, and peppers and those kind of things. So, and I just think my van life experience has led into the way I'm currently living. And I love it, to be honest. Like I love being a minimalist. And like I said, yesterday I did a podcast about being a minimalist is that we sleep on our mattress on the floor in our bedroom. We don't even have a bed. So yeah, I mean, that kind of thing. We haven't bought a couch because we only sit down for 2 hours a day. So like, well, why spend $900 on a couch when we only sit on it for so long? I'd rather spend $900 on skis and, go outside and go do something like that. So I think just my entire life has kind of shifted to be more of a minimalist.
And that's so funny. I feel there's two extreme movements that I see a lot is like people like you and me are trying to live more simplistic and like in tune with nature. And then there's the opposite side of like capitalist America where it's like, I want the biggest house full of everything I can possibly imagine.
Right.
It's really hard to break that cycle too, because we all came from that. Well, I don't know about you specifically, but like I came from like the normal American,
that too.
Yeah. Normal American lifestyle. Yeah. Like get as much as you can before you drop dead. And it's like, but I don't even touch 90% of this stuff. You know, like I don't, like I have my camera, I buy things now that are important to me. Like I have my camera gear, I have my podcasting gear, I have my outdoors gear. That's pretty much it. Like I don't have a lot of other weird, I don't even watch TV.
Oh, yeah, we watch Netflix, like I said, maybe 2 hours a night after eating dinner just to kind of decompress, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's I just feel so much more free because I could just hop on a plane and go out to wherever I wanted to with a backpack and go hike for a while if I wanted to. And I think it's setting up your lifestyle to the point where like obviously you have money to do the basic things in life, but not being scared to like actually spend money to go do stuff that matters to you. Right. I think that's really important nowadays. Like nobody's doing that anymore where everybody's worried about their 401k and all that stuff's all important, obviously, to some extent, but like you got to live too.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think if somebody were to walk into our house today, they'd be like, who are these college students? There's nothing here. We have a 1500 square foot house, and there's nothing in it. I mean, it was actually, we moved into this house because it was the only thing available. We'd actually, from the van, we moved into an Airstream as a transition period. But unfortunately, because it's growing, I have a foodie lab now. One of our bedrooms is just dedicated to like my dehydrators and freeze dryers and all that kind of thing. But yeah, it's been kind of funny that transition as to where we are now.
That was one thing I wanted to ask you. What's like the basic essentials that like anyone could get? Like a freeze dryer is pretty expensive. Like the average person.
I'm not your usual person.
Yeah, exactly. But what's like somebody that wanted to just make their full through hike meals or even just weekend stuff, like weekend warrior style, like you're kind of doing now? What is like the essential tools of the trade for like making your own backpacking food? I feel like I have a good idea, but
you don't really need anything, to be honest, because I've transitioned because I know people have busy lifestyles. I'm trying to help people that do have busy lifestyles spend what time they do have outside. So a lot of our recipes are what I call grocery friendly, to where you can literally like, you know what, I want to go this weekend, run to the grocery store, pull a few things off the shelf. They're all dry ingredients, dump them in a bag, and you're ready to go. You don't need a dehydrator. You don't need to order the huge Amazon order of this powder, this freeze dried, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. It's just circling all the way back to take your regular food and just use it in a dehydrated form. So if you want to just start, you don't need to buy anything. That's
the best option, a couple of Ziploc bags and some whatever food you're going to eat and you're good to go. I do have a dehydrator. I've had one since I thru hiked the AT. My parents thought I was going to make all my own food, so they bought me this giant dehydrator, and I unfortunately don't use it hardly ever because like you said, we're all busy. Gather dust. Yeah. So it's good. And, back to the dollar store thing, that's kind of what you're working on now. What would say you're going to go out for 4 days and the only available thing is a Dollar Tree, dollar store. Mm-hmm. What would it look like for you if you had like an hour to run in and get enough food for 4 days? That's usually about what it takes as a thru hiker to run in and stay in the AC as long as possible. Maximize your cool time. What would you grab? Where would you do? Like, what would a quick, simple recipe running through the store look like?
Well, I just did a brand new one. I'm actually working on next month. I have 5 new ones coming up next month that I'm doing. I did 6 new Dollar Tree recipes last month. I'm thinking back to my most recent overnight that I did. I did like an apple crumble. Believe it or not, the Dollar Trees have freeze-dried fruit. They're actually in their snack aisle. So I got a bag of granola, some of the freeze-dried apples, some coconut chips, and coconut oil is kind of my little thing to add some little extra calories in there and flavor. Add that all into the granola bag itself. Shake it up, and then you've actually got a meal. So in that one, I only add 2 ounces of water too. So it's actually almost like a dessert. It's really, really good. So that would be a breakfast. You can go in there and get oatmeal packets. They sell pecans and almonds in there. You can get some brown sugar. You can put more raisins in. They actually sell raisins too. So that's another one of those. Don't just get that instant packet of oatmeal. Add all these other things in. They have couscous. So I did a couscous meal with some raisins and like using a lot of spices. You can buy spices super cheap there.
Yeah.
So a bunch of spices. Well, here, let me get my list of recipes here. I'm working on. Well, even the trail mix, instead of just grabbing all the like garbage sweets that are off of there, make your own trail mix. Again, using dried fruit that they have. I do like chocolate covered like fruit as a treat. So add some of that in, add some nuts, coconut chips in there. So it's actually, you just have to kind of know how to shop down the aisles which is why I'm doing these recipes for people. So it's a matter of just combining things instead of just pulling off the one thing that's already put together. So.
Yeah, and I think I have fond memories of sitting at picnic tables and in really dingy motel rooms on the Appalachian Trail, assembling food into weird combinations. Like, oh, we're going to have, like, you learn that you can actually cook food and you don't have to just squeeze things out of packets, like when you're out there for months and months on end, you have nothing better to do than think about stuff all the time. Like we would assemble. We'd get Ziploc bags and I'd make like meal kits essentially and zip them up. And then you're like, oh, today we're going to have tacos. So you'd pull out this bag of what you would be making tacos with. And I think one of the things that I found the most useful for me to like keep me sane, because I'm not a tuna fan, like I just can't do it. I tried it on the trail. I couldn't do it. Like one time I opened my bag and I ripped open a tuna pack and it was like spoiled and it just took it over the edge. Like I couldn't ever eat it again. But they had the chicken in those packets like that too, things like that people I think overlook a lot of the time if they're not.
Actually, I'm like you. I don't like the taste of tuna, but if I can mask it with a bunch of other stuff, it's a good way to get protein in. And that's actually, I thought about that. That was one of my most recent recipes is I made like a pesto tuna. Is I added a bunch of herbs, some Parmesan cheese and olive oil in the tuna and then put it on crackers. And I mean, it was a super easy lunch that I didn't mind, even though I'm not normally a tuna person.
Well, even the flavored ones they make aren't like too terrible. Like that covers the flavor of the tuna up a little bit. It's just not.
And the Dollar Tree actually has 4 flavors. I was shocked. They have the chipotle Thai, they have a lemon herb, they have a garlic and herb, and something else I've forgotten. Oh, sun-dried tomato. Yeah.
Sun-dried tomato.
So I made a sun-dried tomato. Oh, yeah.
Well, one thing that I really like on especially on your Instagram, that's where I like to scroll on social media if I do, which is rarely anymore. It looks like you make a lot of desserts on the trail, which I find really interesting. Like that little luxury at the end of a day would make your day so much better. So what's like your favorite dessert you make? I know there's just so many you post. I don't know.
I have a sweet tooth. It's kind of a problem. So it's one of those things that always goes with me because, if you have a really horrible day on trail, if you have something that makes you happy, it can just like change everything. So I would say, my tiramisu that I posted most recently is really yummy. And it's super simple too. It's just instant pudding, whole milk powder, instant coffee, some cinnamon, I think is what's in there, and vanilla wafers. I mean, just all normal ingredients you can buy at the grocery store. Then my other favorite is my key lime cheesecake, which is essentially instant pudding with whole milk powder, the lime powder, which you can buy at the Dollar Tree too, believe it or not, and graham crackers crumbled up. I mean, again, just all normal food. So
I just found out recently this last year I went to Florida and I had never had key lime pie before, and I've been like obsessed with it. Like they make it up here in Ohio and like prepackaged.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. It's nowhere close. So to have that on a backpacking trip would probably be the highlight of my life. So I'm going to have to check that recipe out for sure.
It's so good. Awesome. And it's so easy. You just put it in a bag, shake it up, and then I crumble the graham crackers on top and it's done.
Oh my gosh. I can't. I want it now. I want to make that right now. Like as soon as the podcast is over, I need some key lime pie in my life. But, is there anything that you've kind of been working on with Backcountry Foodie that maybe, I mean, you're doing the Condor Trail right now. Is there anything down the road that you're maybe trying to work on, or, people might keep an eye out for? Is there like any stuff that's like
our big project right now is we're building a hiking calorie calculator. All the ones that are available online just make me cringe because we did an extensive review of 20 different calculators because I just hear so many people talking about calories, they're under eating and that kind of thing. So I was like, well, what's going on? What's the problem? So we reviewed 20 of them and they estimate how many calories you eat, how many calories your body burns, but they don't tell you how many calories you need, which is your basal metabolic rate. How many calories you need when you're just sitting around camp. So unfortunately, that can underestimate your calories by 2,000 sometimes.
Yeah.
So what our calculator is going to do is it does your basal metabolic rate, and it figures out how many calories you need based on how much your pack weighs, what the terrain is like, what the temperature is like. I mean, it's going to have all these different variables. And also the really cool part is you can put your GPS tracks in it. So it knows exactly like your mileage and your terrain and the elevation change and all that. So that's kind of our next big project that we're currently working on that I'm really excited about. And it's all based on science. I've read all the research, so it's not me just plugging in numbers. It's actually based on a lot of military studies is where we got our data from.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, that would have been useful 5-6 years ago when I was doing that. So, they had like Fitbits back then, but they were like very rudimentary. Like they weren't even waterproof yet when I started. I was like, well, that's not going to help me at all. I probably would have been, it's probably better that way because I would have been concerned about how many calories I was burning because I'm like not a small person. Like I burn a lot. I burn still to this day like 3,400 calories a day. And that's just like normal day in, day out life.
Right.
So it just goes to show like, when you're hiking and walking all day with heavy weight, you're putting in a lot of effort every single day.
Every single day.
Every single day. But, one more question I think that I would be interested in is, do you prefer to do, there's a big debate between cold soaking, not cooking at all, or cooking on the trail. Do you have a preference that you enjoy personally? Not to say which one's better or worse, because it all is personal preference. So anything that you prefer.
And this was, so I did the Oregon Coast Trail. I did all cold soaking because I wanted to be like experiment with it. I've really not done a lot of cold soaking. So I learned a lot that trip of what I like about cold soaking and what I don't like about cold soaking. So what I've since learned is to only eat foods cold that are naturally meant to be eaten cold. So pasta salads, bean dips, and all those kinds of things. I love cold soaked. So a lot of those I'll do for lunches just because I don't like to stop and get out my pot and that kind of thing. And then typically, depending on the season too, if I want to have a hot meal during the summer, I may just cold soak, or I do a lot of no cook. So things just add water and stir. So I don't really prefer one over the other. It's more kind of whatever my trip is going to look like as to what I think I'd enjoy the most.
Fair enough. Yeah. I prefer more so to just be able to like you said, assemble some things and eat them, because I'll cook at the end of the day usually, but like breakfast and lunch on a trail, like I'm not cooking anything. I'll heat up some water for coffee, but I'm not like waking up at 6 and just cooking a full breakfast. It's just not in the books for me. I'm out there to like enjoy the nature, not so much be concerned about cooking at 5 a.m. or whenever you have to get up to go hike. So that's, I really enjoy that. And so, before we kind of wrap up here, where can people, where's your preferred places for people to follow you? Where can they learn more? And then any kind of, resources that you have available for people to learn more about nutrition, or courses they can take through you, all that stuff. Where can people learn more about Backcountry Foodie?
Well, we can go to backcountryfoodie.com is where our hub, I guess you could say, is. That's where you can find my recipes. We have 3 different tiers. So if you're just interested in recipes, you can look at our recipes. If you're kind of a long distance hiker or somebody that just likes to plan, we have our meal planner. That's a drag and drop meal planner. It adds up all the nutrition for you, how much the food weighs, how much water you need, how much olive oil, and it's actually soon going to tell you how much stove fuel to take. That's another big project that we're going to do. So if you don't want to do it by hand anymore, it's all automated for you. Then our next level are our master classes. So I teach a lot of different classes on just general don't hit the wall, backpacking food 101, high altitude, cold weather. I actually hired a dietitian that's really good at helping hikers prepare before their trips. I'm not good at weight loss before trips. I can help you out being on the trail, but beforehand, I'm not a good resource. So I was getting a lot of questions about that, and I have since hired a dietitian to help people with that. I do also coaching on the side, nutrition coaching. So that's all on the website, the blog there. And then you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. I'd love to do more YouTube videos, but I'm so busy with the membership site and those kind of things that my YouTube videos have kind of fallen off. But ultimately, I'd like to do a lot more videos.
Yeah, videos are fun, and they're like what social media tells you that you need to make nowadays, but they are very time consuming.
They're time consuming, yeah.
So like all the people listening and watching, when you watch those really sweet, high quality YouTube videos, just remember somebody spent a lot of time making those and like for no money, essentially, in the long term. I mean, yeah. It's a passion project, so just keep that in mind. And
thank you.
And Aaron, I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast. Sure. I learned a lot. I hope my listeners learned a lot. And I hope if people are trying to plan and they're confused on nutrition, they'll head over to your website and it has the whole gamut. You can learn anything you ever want to don't know about nutrition. And if you're not a reader, you can go on your YouTube channel. You've got great diet tips on there. You've got free resources. You've got paid resources. You run the gamut. So thank you for what you do. I think it's a movement that needs more traction in the outdoors world so we can stay healthy and keep enjoying the outdoors.
Yep. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
All right.